Welcome back to Stu Structures. We're here for week 3 of building the Belington Union Station, so stay tuned. So thank you for coming back and sharing this time with me. We are here to continue building knee walls for the bottom of the Belington Union Station, and then we're going to start working our way up from there. You saw I had the strips for brick cut for the bottom part of that, but we got to finish putting the knee wall supports in before we can put the brick in that lower level. And I don't know, I've got 1,001 things to work on, so let's just jump into it this week and see what direction we head in. Alright, this is how we left it in last week's video. I still have some of these small pieces in the end walls to add in as far as the knee walls go. So that's where I'm going to start at. And I come through and cut the long pieces at the very end, and everywhere there's corners I do these 45s on there. I mean, sometimes I mention it, sometimes I don't, but basically I just use sandpaper and I don't measure the angle. I start with a 120 to cut down the edge quick, and then I used a 220 just to finish out the angle. And in each piece when I cut it, I just come through and test fit every piece, because every once in a while something just isn't right and you have to redo a piece. But basically, once I add the top piece and the 3x3 underneath of them like I did all the others, I just come back and start gluing all those into place. And these are all the long pieces in place. And then I've got all those side walls to put in, or the returns on both sides. I had showed you how to do the returns on the one side at the end of last week's video, but I've got these other 3 on this other side. And I'm just gluing these into place and then coming back, and I'm going to do the top pieces that meet the 2 layers of stone on top as a separate piece. I just think this would be too hard to glue in place and then get everything to fit. I think it's easier this way. So then I cut all those, top stone pieces and put the 3x3 underneath it and come back and add each of those in. And then basically that's all of the stonework around the top of the wall. Now where all these window marks are that I had down in the ground, I'm just going to bring those up, and these are center lined of windows, but I'm just going to come back and mark those on top of that top plate now. And then I'd get those brick strips that I had pre-cut, and I'm going to come back and start cutting all these. Some of these have flat sides where they meet doors, but all the corners have these angles because the bottom sticks out taller than, or farther than the top does. And you can see the ends of these. I'm going to have to come back and do some fill and some working with all the ends where these doors are going to go into. But basically what I'm going to do is just cut all these pieces for this side, test fit everything, and then come back, and I just use a Tester's old model cement for this. I just find that it's one of the best adhesives for plastic to wood, and it adheres really well. And then I glue all those into place, and now I've got one side totally done except for closing in the end where the doors are. And now I'm just going to come back and set the doors that I had pre-made in these places and look at them. I mean, some of these are going to need just a little bit of a buffer to fill out. These small doors have the glass panes and stuff on the sides of them, so I'm going to have to build those to fit the opening. I wish I'd made these just a little bit wider, but I'm going to live with it, and we're going to make it work just the way they are. So once I have all this brick, I'm just going to continue on building all this edging, and the long sides I have done, but once these are done, then I got to come back, and I've got the 2 ends yet that I need to enclose. So I just go back and cut the angles on those and get some glue behind them and set those in place so they can get settled up. And you can see the opened ends where the door areas are in both of these. So that's another thing I'm going to have to come back here and remedy in a minute or two. But basically that's the brick all done. And here's a close-up of those open ends where the doors are going to be, and I need to come back and deal with that. So I just take that, that spackle, and I mean, everywhere there's corners like this, there's little tiny open gaps here and there. Even where the brick meets the wood in the bottom, in some places, there are just tiny little gaps. So I'm just going to use this lightweight spackle like I do to fill, in all my other jobs. And basically what I use to apply this is I just turn a knife blade backwards in an X-Acto handle, and I'm just kind of using this blade end as a spatula to just, smooth out all these gaps. And I've got some cleanup to do, but basically you can see here, once I get all these filled, and it does take a couple of different applications. But basically, once that's done, that's all the cracks filled. I've got a little cleanup to do, but basically that's the whole knee wall all the way up finished. Now these windows last week, I showed you that I had to come back, and I'm going to have to add some mullions into these. And I'm going to do this in two ways. To begin with, I'm going to do the upright additions into these windows with this real small styrene. And so I'm going to measure my chopper, because these have to be exact to fit in these windows. And I had to play with a couple different ones to finally get the exact length of these right. And then basically what I'm going to come back and do is just glue these into these windows. And I don't know that they're perfect. I do one side and try to check it out, and come back and do the top side of the same window, and get one of these put together, and I'm thinking, okay, this is going to work. So now I just got to come back and start doing them in bulk. I've got 13 of these windows to do, and it's kind of a pain in the butt, but it's got to be done. And here, I'm always antsy, so I'm just setting one in place to see how it's going to look. And these windows, I showed you how I trimmed the wood trim off of these windows to make them casement windows in the last episode. But also in these, the bottom center mullion is not in these windows. There are 8 by 8 inch panes in the top half, but this bottom half is a single wide window. So I just had to come back and cut out the mullions of the center of those windows. So there you have this week's segment of building the B&O station in Belington, West Virginia, the Union Station. I didn't get as much done this week as I would have liked to. And this next week we'll start with that upper wall, that second section of the wall above with the windows and everything. It's taken me a good while to get those windows, and I hate scratch building windows. Mullions are just tiny little pieces of plastic, and it's a pain to do. But it is something you can do. But I figured out how to do all the smaller 8 by 8 panes, I think, so we'll try that in the next video. So come back and share this time with me next week, and we'll get some more done on this structure, and maybe we can get Belington started put together as far as modules eventually here in a few months. This is the last major structure that I'm going to do right now for Belington. There was a nice hotel called the Luzerne Hotel in Belington at one time. While it did set back off the railroad a little ways, it was a huge 3-story Victorian style hotel. And Henry Ford, Mr. Firestone, Thomas Edison, several people would meet here in Belington at that hotel and go on hunting and fishing expeditions throughout the state. And it's just really a very nice structure. So I may build it down the road, but for right now, I think with everything I've built, we can put a few modules together, and I can show it locally whenever we have, events going on in town here. So that's my plan. But we got to get this structure a little further along to make that happen. So come back next week. Thank you for coming back and sharing this time with me this week. Like and subscribe if you have not done so far, and happy model railroading.